Sunday, August 17th, 2014, and we're going to continue with our audio files series, and we're going to be answering some questions. These are questions that have been asked of us via email, through our website, and also in person throughout the years. So the first question is, do people volunteer to be abducted?
That's been talked about for a long time. I don't believe they volunteer. They're told that they do, and some tend to believe that, but I don't think that's true. Who would volunteer for such horror and terror?
Well, there's a good possibility that even as light workers have volunteered to be here, the negative forces want to have their people in place also. I could see it. I'll play the devil's advocate today, but I can see where they could feel that they're doing a job for their side.
That's good, because I think maybe we need to look at both sides, and in the event that sort of thing would be happening, and an individual comes to the realization that, hey, I don't like this. I don't want this to happen anymore. What then?
Then they always have the option to say, now that I'm fully aware of all the repercussions of that decision, in the name of God and Jesus Christ, I break that. It is not binding on me once I know what is happening.
Of course, the negative aliens are always going to be trying to tell them that you cannot, you can't, you agreed to this, you have to go through with it. I think what people have to realize is there is power greater than negativity, and that is the side of the light, and that is God and Jesus. And you have the power, but you have to realize you have it. You can't just say, well, I think I have it. That's not going to work then.
Well, you have to be unashamedly Christian. Not ashamed of your Christian faith, but proud of it and believe in it.
Well, maybe not so much necessarily Christian, but stand in your own power and beliefs. You know, whatever.
Spirituality, I like to call it, more than
belief
religion.
System. Right. Whatever belief system that may be, too.
That they have, yeah. I believe that all faiths have good points and bad points, and you have to decide which way you're going to go. But, you know, so many years people have been standing on the fence. You know, if I stay here, I'm safe. Well, I don't think you're safe anymore sitting on the fence. You're going to have to choose one side or the other. And personally, I would go with the light and with Jesus and God. I believe that they are the true saviors of the universe and earth and mankind.
Well, and I heard comments like people say things like, I've tried this and it didn't work for me. How would you respond to someone like that?
You can't try. How many people say, well, I've tried to roller skate, but I couldn't do it. But they did it once. And no, you cannot think you're a failure before you even start. You have to believe in yourself and the Creator and Jesus, that they are our salvation.
I think, excuse me, I think the key is to have no doubt. If you, just like Yoda, let's go quote Yoda, do or do not, there is no try. You can't go into this thinking it might not work. You have to believe. You have to have faith.
No, and I figured that before we were born, if we had a certain path to come down and we agreed to do it, but once we were concepted and became a human form, that as you grow older with your education, whatever it may be, you have the right to say yes or no to any abductions, because it's your free will to do that. It may not have been what you originally wanted, but when you get to understand what you may have to suffer with and everything else, no, I would say no, don't be abducted.
Right.
Again, look in the power of God, so.
Yes. So actually, it's your own personal conviction and standing within your own power and your own spirit in conjunction with God or whoever that may be for you. I call him God.
The creative force.
So, okay, the next question is, according to your research, what is the best way to refuse or stop an abduction?
I think that's as unique as each individual, but I personally have witnessed people telling at least 3 different ways, but it's like the power of darkness, you call on the ultimate power of light, you know, with faith.
Well, I've heard of people stopping an abduction by saying the Lord's Prayer. So I think it's whatever you feel safe on calling on. That's more powerful than you are. I think we have to realize that we're not as powerful as we think we are. When we're fighting the negative forces, we need a little extra help. And I think that's where we have to go.
And that's the thing, we can't do it alone. Most people think they've got they just use themselves. I mean, I know you said you got to call on, you know, have faith in yourself too, but alone, we're nothing. We've got to call on the highest, you know, positive power that we know.
And I know a woman who I thought was very spiritual and very powerful, and the aliens were bothering her, and she said, come on and get me. You can't get me. They did. They got her, and she went downhill, and she left the field and everything. Instead of calling on someone, you know, I mean, she was actually charging them to go ahead, try it. I would never do that. Never. I got to think about this one a little bit, mainly because if I feel defensive, because of my background, I have a tendency to want to fight. And I just, when you know it's bigger than you are, and when you want to, well, I can't say when you want to fight, but you're creating a certain amount of negativity, and to try to keep love in the background as your support, that is very hard to do. It's like if you're trying to step in between 2 people fighting. You had better hope that you've got a stronger force behind you, so that when you have to walk in the middle, that something is protecting you. And this is what I feel about trying to keep the perspective of we were created with love, and we're supposed to keep continuing on spreading that. But when you feel you're part of humanity being challenged, you have to watch on how you do things and say things that do not create negativity, because then you're also adding fuel to the bad side. And that's something that I always have to constantly remind myself of this. So I usually try to say a quick prayer first before I proceed with any action that I plan on doing. So, or I'll say prayer towards the people that need the help, and then hopefully, you know, the good Lord will answer it all. So but that's kind of how I look at it. So, and it isn't as if they haven't tried to abduct me. I mean, I've come close to a couple times, and I've always, you know, sent out my light, the light of the Creator around me, and said a prayer to Jesus and God. And that has stopped it. But I knew instantly that these beings were not good. The hair went on the back of my neck, and it wasn't that I was so frightened, but I knew they were negative, and I knew I had to take precautions. And it worked.
I had an incident where I was paralyzed in my bed, and I knew that it was a negative entities were trying to get me, and I hadn't completely learned how to defend myself yet. But what I felt was anger. I was angry that anybody had the gall to try to abduct me, you know, abduct anybody against their will. And I did get a message that, well, I did say a prayer for help, but I was given a message that I wasn't kind enough or calm enough. Because I mean, like somebody just said, when you have a negative emotion, you feed into the dark side, the negative, you give them power. So I learned to take your own power and be filled with positive power. And that got me through it.
So you're saying if you have a negative thought, a negative emotion, a negative action, this is going to draw the negativity to you.
Yeah. Oh, yes, and then empower them to
Right.
continue doing what they're doing to you.
Right.
Well, that's the theme of the practical theme of the book of James in the New Testament. In your weakness, you have the strength of God behind you. You recognize you can't handle it. You allow God to help. Very practical advice.
Well, and I don't believe that darkness can survive in the light. Once the light comes, it dissipates the dark. And I don't care what faith or what belief system you have, there are no atheists in a foxhole. When you're in trouble, in deep terror and horror of what's happening around you, you call on something more powerful than you. I don't care if you call it the Creator or the Force or God. You call on something for protection. No one likes to fight this battle alone.
And we don't have to.
Right.
Well, and I think a lot of people, when we mention the word God, they view it as religious. It has nothing to do with religious. It's a spiritual thing without the religion. It's you working in conjunction with God and or Jesus, because this is something that is bigger than you, and you need more help than what you can face it on your own. Well, I guess this next question leads right into what we were talking about. What if a person having bad encounters is not religious?
You're saying they don't believe in God, basically.
I don't consider myself religious. I consider myself spiritual, which means that I feel I have a connection to God without having to go through a church. I believe in a higher power without having a church or a minister or a priest or a rabbi telling me how to think. And I think a situation like this is strictly between you and God. You do not need a church or a pastor to tell you what to do.
Well, I'm kind of getting the impression that the person who emailed that didn't believe in God. There's a lot of people who don't believe in God, who don't believe in hell. You know, so they don't have, it's like they're pretty much coming in here handicapped, you know. But here's it. I'm going to quote something, not quote, but talk about something that Heidi Hollis talks about. She says, if this something's happening to you that's so negative, you believe in the negative force, you believe in this negative entity, why do you not believe in something more powerful, in the positive side?
Mhm.
You know, you're just limiting yourself, and you're pretty much putting yourself as a victim with no way out. I don't know, I would not know what to say to a person besides that if they didn't believe in God. If they believe in evil, you don't believe in anything good. That's the only...
Right. And
How can you believe in one side and not the other?
Okay.
I mean, if they are believing in the power of evil, I would say their soul has been hijacked, and they don't want to hear about good. You know, their shackles come up whenever you mention Jesus or God.
Well, maybe their shackles don't come up, but they just don't realize that even in nature, there's always a balance. So why wouldn't there be a balance in good and evil? I mean, there's got to be a balancing force there someplace. All you have to do is look at nature and you see that. So why wouldn't it be for humans too?
Well, I understand sometimes where they're coming from, because I have a friend whose mother was a religious fanatic and pounded it down her throat all of her life. And she got to the age where she thought for herself and she rebelled. But she still believes in a higher power. She doesn't like to call it God because that's religious to her. She calls it the force, which to me is one and the same.
mhm.
I think the Native Americans call God the Great Spirit. You know, I guess he's known by many names.
And I've heard the aliens many times call him the creator of all.
Mhm. Yeah.
So there's many different cultures have many different names. And I think we have to be understanding of all of them.
And it is the age-old battle of good versus evil. Like another person said, Diana said, if you believe in a negative force, how can you not believe there's another force out there that's positive, that's so much better, that can come to your aid and help you out of these situations? It has nothing, again, to do with religion. It's your spirit in conjunction with God and Jesus. And I personally do not know any other way to tell a person how you can get out of these situations without their help behind you. That's the only way I know of. What is the difference between a contact and an abduction?
Well, the early contactees were called contactees, and they said they were allowed to walk around the ships. They had discussions, and I'm just going to segue over to the abductees, where they say they're strapped down on a table, they can't move, they're not discussing, the aliens are doing things to them. They feel like a lab rat, so there's no spirituality in the negative situation at all.
Well, and the positive side actually has a sense of humor. And they would never do anything to cause you fear or terror. If they try and make contact and it scares you, they would back off immediately. Whereas the other side wouldn't even consider that. They don't care. That's their agenda.
And I'm going to put you on the spot a little. You did a case study. Can you give a few examples of differences that you noted in the case study that you did? There were very many similarities, but there were subtle or very extreme differences also. But the cases were so similar in many areas.
Right. That was something that I find nowadays in the modern abduction contact scenarios, that the things that are the same are kind of scary, because both sides have to, it's like the dark side have been listening in or reading up on what the contactees are talking about, and they're kind of simulating that same experience for abductees. Some abductees now think they volunteered for this whole thing. Yeah, I don't know if that's the case or not. Like Bonnie said, they can tell you whatever they want to lie to you to get you to comply. But some of the differences, like I think Russ just said, one of the main differences is the fact that mainly they want you to remember, and they want you to make positive action. They want you to tell people about the fact that there are good and bad out there, to inform people.
And you have the power to stop it.
You have the power to say, if you don't want to go that night, you don't go. Another one is you are not taken against your will. You are not experimented on. There's no implants. There's humor. That you're free to roam. Somebody I know was able to actually fly a craft, and I've never heard of anything like that with an abduction.
I think for me a big thing is, how did it start?
Oh,
how did it start? Many times, I think all the time, the abductees talk about how terrified they are, horrified, and suddenly some kind of transformation takes place, which I don't understand how this transformation takes place or what exactly happens there. But in the beginning, they're horrified, and suddenly it becomes like a spiritual thing to them.
The problem I have with the abduction situation is they explain it almost exactly the same way, like it's almost a screen memory. They all see the same thing in the same order. I mean, when you talk with a group of people, you should have numerous different descriptions. When they're all the same, that raises a red flag for me.
Is that possible that maybe the terror part that these people have received can be blotted out of their memory, so that they might have only, it's like taking a sequence out and you went from the first to the last without knowing what happened in the middle?
Yeah, they could.
If they're, if they're so strong and being joyous about it, that there had to have been some sort of a transformation, or else they plucked out the memory that didn't bother them.
I even wrote and asked one abductee how all of a sudden it changed from horror to something wonderful, and he wrote me back and ignored that question because I don't think he even knew or what happened in this transition. But he wrote the book, and I wanted to know, gee, was it something special that happened that made him change his mind? Because I'm always looking for answers, But he never answered my question and wrote back very flowery stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's happened to a lot of abductees.
And Russ was talking about a screen memory, something that they can implant into your head. What if they can take or block the actual memories of this terror-filled experience, so that you don't, you can't associate them with that anymore?
And I know that some abductees are going to get very upset about this discussion, but I have had many experiences with UFOs and aliens, and I understand fully what the abductees are saying. I believe them, and I don't run them down when they're telling their stories, but they turn around and tell me that I'm the one who has a problem. Okay. I have been deceived. I have been taken, and I just don't remember. Why can't they accept when I accept them?
In other words, the abductees don't accept your contact that
You're right.
Fully
accepted that it could happen.
Okay.
And I just find that very strange, because I certainly accept what's happening to them. I don't understand why.
So they're saying you are not remembering
Correctly.
properly.
Right, that,
Correct.
these things that,
And that you're actually being abducted. And
right,
Instead of
and
having,
having experiments done on me and everything else.
So what is, in contrast, what is the contact experience like then?
Well, it is, number one, eye-opening.
it's like they wouldn't contact you without a specific purpose.
Well, yeah, and I asked them why would they even contact me, and they said, well, you've been studying about aliens for a while, and we want you to know they're not all blonde-haired, blue-eyed. There are many different species out there in space. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. But the first time they came in a ship and they wanted me to go with them, I was frightened. And they were going to leave because I was afraid. They weren't going to take me against my will. So that's the major thing, I think, difference between an abductee and a contactee, is they respect you enough that if you're frightened, they won't take you against your will. They will give you time to adjust to it and let you study more and understand more what's going on.
Well,
And make your own choice.
right.
Right. But they would wait until I was ready, and if I was never ready, that would be okay. You know? So, it was shocking at first, but once I realized that they weren't going to take me against my will, I thought, well, they can't be all bad.
So
So when I decided, yes, I would go with them, then they took me with them.
and then obviously you weren't put on a table and experimented on what
Never.
happened your first
Never.
contact.
All the times I would contact, only once was I looked at by a doctor, and it was really funny because I was on a table and they were moving my knees all different directions.
Now, Bonnie, you're talking about an Earth doctor, right?
No.
No,
Oh, okay.
an alien doctor. I mean, very human looking. And he was moving my knee and looking at me, and I thought, well, why is he doing that? And I'm sure he said something to me, but I don't remember. A lot of times I don't remember 100% everything that happens. But I believe it was 2 years later I realized what he was doing. I had to have an artificial knee. And I think what he was doing was checking my knee out to see how I was doing.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can figure out, because it was like 2 years later that I had to have an artificial knee put in. And so I thought, well, too bad I wouldn't have remembered that. Maybe I could have done something. But they don't do that type of thing. They also do not interfere in our lives. I mean, a lot of times I hear people saying, well, you know, did nasty things to me, but they healed me in this, or they gave me this special little treat or something like that. Now, the aliens that I've had contact with said, we will not do that. It's an Earth problem. It has to be taken care of by Earth things. And many times, when they do heal you, the negative aliens, it comes with something that you have to do in return.
Comes with a string attached.
Yeah, and I've heard people say that, well, the aliens said they'd heal me, but I had to have an implant. What? Why would they want an implant? But to keep track of you? That doesn't sound... no, I wouldn't even go there. I wouldn't even...
So that leads into my last question. What is an implant?
Well, an implant is something that they put in you to physically keep track of you. Usually, I've known a lot of people who have claimed to have implants that they were magically removed without having anything removed. I don't know how that's done, but there are people who have had implants removed. We've had an implant that was brought to us. A very small, tiny little thing.
And how do you think that happened? How do you think the implant came out?
It supposedly came out of a child's ear. And implants, I've heard of them being in noses, where people come up with bloody noses, in their ears, a lot of them in the arms, legs, almost any part of the body. But it really surprises me. I've asked my alien contacts about implanting, and they said, we don't do that. You don't? Well, we maybe did it years and years and years ago, but we don't do it anymore because we now use a soul computer. What they do is every soul vibrates at a different speed, vibration, whatever you want to call it. I don't know
Frequency.
Right. And once they have that, they know where you are at all times. They know if you're in trouble. They know if you're going along good or whatever. So they don't need implants anymore. They don't physically have to have something in your body anymore.
But I think one other thing that I'm not sure, but I believe that when the negative aliens implant, that they can track and manipulate you, your emotions. Can they kind of control you?
Especially if they're in your head.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, there would be no reason for the positive aliens to do anything like that. They like to be aware of where their people are. They call it their people. That's why they have the soul computer, and they know everybody's got a different light vibration, whatever. But I think to really need to make the difference that the dark side would track and try to control
you. Yes.
And I'd just like to add, I understand, I know where they are inserted in the body. I didn't mean that when I asked you that question. I meant, how did the implant get expelled? How did that occur? Anybody?
I'm not too sure about that specific one.
But
I believe where you're trying to get to is, you can just say a person was out of balance and they got taken. That's when you don't have your defenses up. You're easier to get taken. Yes, but if you get an implant, you can, with prayer, faith, sending out the light, expel or dissolve.
Or disactivate.
Yeah, deactivate an implant.
There was a doctor at one time that when he was told about implants that he would actually take it out. But he's now passed on, but one of the stories, they said that he had taken one out and the thing was very, very alive, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared. And that was it. So I don't know if anyone else has been able to do that since this doctor, but...
I know one gentleman that said the implant came out of him, and he put it down on the sink, turned around, and then turned back to the sink. It was gone.
But
so they must dissolve or disintegrate or something.
Unless they're in human fluid. But again, it's my understanding that we can expel them. We do not need to surgically remove them. We can have them be expelled by sharing our love and our light with them and the Creator's love and light. And they will expel from the body.
Or deactivate.
Right.
It doesn't matter how it's turned off, but as long as it's gone. It no longer
It's inoperable.
has the connection with the negative aliens.
And maybe with children, when they get so that they can think and make decisions for themselves, if they turn to the spiritual side, it expels.
Yes.
Automatically.
I think so. Are there any other sources I can go to find out about how to refuse abductions?
Go to the PDF file.
How to refuse alien abduction on our website. That's very good.
And that lists some other sources.
There are many books written on that where you can get that information. Also, we have a friend named Heidi Hollis who has a website called UFO to You. She has a radio show, and she can be contacted. She has numerous books written on this, and she is a very good source.
And she has a new book.
Yes, she has a new book called The Hat Man, which talks about the shadow people and its leader, the Hat Man, which we will get into later.
I think that's the end of today's installment.
See you next time.
Talk to you next time.